Awesome. So I don't know. I didn't hear any of the audio. I know that the people watching at home did because it's a different piping out stream, but I'm assuming that the rest of the audio stuff is just fine. Welcome everybody to the Sunday show, the regular Sunday show at 2, not the Sunday show after dark, which will be on later this evening. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me, Owen Morgan. How are you, sir?
Awesome. Doing well. Thank you for asking.
I am... There are so many people that I've managed to do these shows with over the years, and so literally, not to blow smoke or anything else, but Arden was like, "Oh, I think you're doing the Sunday show at 2 tomorrow," and I was like, "Oh yeah. Who am I doing it with?" And she's like, "Owen," and I was like, "Oh, good. It's been ages since Owen and I got to do a show."
It has, hasn't it? It's been like I don't know, like 6 months, maybe something like that.
Something. Hope all of you are doing well. Let me tell you all a little bit about this show. It is a live call-in show, like all of the shows here on the Line Network. The schedule currently is in flux as we do not have names listed for any of the shows. But for those who aren't aware, we do the Sunday show at 2 p.m. Central every Sunday. And the Sunday show after dark is at 7 p.m. every Sunday. And tonight's episode of the Sunday show will be Forrest Valkai and Jimmy Snow. On Mondays at 6 p.m. Central, we have Skeptalk, which is focused more on skepticism and science and things like that, although I know that they will talk about almost anything that you call in with. Tuesday is Chewed Gum, and that focuses on purity culture and how it has impacted women in particular. The Hang Up is a Wednesday night show. That's mine. I do not know who's going to be on with me this Wednesday, but that's January 1st. And of course, Tuesday is New Year's Eve. We're not necessarily sure that there will be a Chewed Gum and a Hang Up this week. What there may be is a lot of fun stuff with line hosts, just like we did for Christmas. Transatlantic Call-In Show is a show that focuses entirely on trans folks answering your questions about trans rights issues and other things. And so if you've been confused by, the Freedom from Religion Foundation's snafu by allowing Jerry Coyne to post some transphobic crap, or you've seen other things like that, that would be a great opportunity to call in and get some better information so that you're not just listening to someone who thinks their narrow focus on biology sums up the entirety of gender, which it doesn't. And we have other things going on, including Because I Want Us and everything else. On this show, we are focused primarily on religious topics, supernatural claims, questions about theism, atheism, and both in the philosophical realm around that. If you think that you have a good reason to believe in a God, to believe in something supernatural, and that we should also believe that, this is the opportunity. This is what you want to call in about, is to call in to defend. Tell us what you believe, why you believe it, why you think we should believe it, and why you think somebody else should believe it. It's probably the more important part, because if you say, "Ooh, I believe in the God of Hoop-de-Doop because it revealed itself to me privately," well, that does nothing for the rest of us. It's not evidence for us. If you want to call in and say, "Ooh, I believe there's a God, but it's the universe is God, dude, and like we're all gods too, and there's a God in my bowl of Cheerios, just like there's a God in the bowl of your bowl of Cheerios," just don't. I have zero interest in the bong rip, esoteric, navel gazing, ooh, God. But the gods that align with what the majority of people are believing, the gods tied to the God of classical theism, whether it's Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, hell, if you want to call in and defend Scientology, at least you're addressing something that more people than merely you give a crap about. And on that front, theists will always get priority. I would like to remind people that there is a delay. There's a delay between myself and Owen. There's a delay between us and the booth. And there's a delay between the callers here. It's just the nature of voice over IP and the fact that some people are calling in from cell phones that are bad at full duplex. Some people are calling in from the web interface. You can look down below. It's 720-619-2288 or through callinstudio.com. The link is down below in the description. Our call screeners are here ready to take your calls, and we already have theists lined up. So without further ado, Owen, if you're ready, we can get started.
Let's do it. I'll pull up Colin's studio.
Sweet. Calling in with our first caller today is a theist named Alfred from Texas, who has a question or statement or something for us to address about anti-Jewish sentiments in the New Testament. So, Alfred, what's up?
Hi. So I just wanted to make a point that you guys often criticize the New Testament in many ways. And as far as I know, you've never really railed against it for its anti-Jewish passages.
I don't care.
This is it's just shocking to me. The New Testament does have anti-Jewish overtones that have caused Christians to murder and oppress Jews for centuries, and it's those anti-Jewish passages that we Christians have to wrestle with, and it's shocking to me that
then you need to go wrestle with it. I don't need to wrestle with it at all. My only concern with the New Testament is it true?
It's just shocking to me that we live in a post-Shoah world, and you guys can't.
I'm sorry, Alfred.
Yes.
Alfred, would you like to defend your theistic beliefs and why we should share them?
Is it because the victims are religious? That's why you really don't care, or what?
Alfred, are you going to defend your beliefs and why we should share them?
I'm just asking a question.
I'm just asking a question, which I'd like you to answer. And since it's our show,
Sure.
And your job as a theist calling in is to defend what you believe and why we should believe it. If you're calling in to say that Christians need to wrestle with anti-Jewish sentiments in the New Testament, you don't do that on this show because we're not Christians. I don't need to wrestle with it. If you want to say
record,
that,
I do talk about that. I have talked about it at length personally.
Yeah. I'm happy to hear that. Okay.
But also, I don't need to talk about it because it doesn't matter. If in fact the story is true,
it matters.
No, it doesn't. If in fact the story is true, then the narrative there is justified. And what conclusions people draw from it, if they draw an anti-Jewish sentiment, is their own problem. But if the story is true, right? If the Jews were responsible for killing the Messiah, which is what the New Testament narrative is,
they were not.
Sorry, what?
They
were
weren't,
not.
and that's correct. They weren't actually responsible.
Most historians believe. Yeah, most historians believe that some Jewish authorities took Jesus to Pilate. Hey, he's causing trouble. And he was like, "Sure, we'll take it from here." It wasn't like you had a subject people pressuring their overlord. Is too much of a statement, but that they could have pressured him into killing one of their own people.
I don't care. You're telling me what people believe about the story, and I only care if it's true.
Do you think Jesus is true? Was he real?
I have no idea if he existed or if we have any record of what he said or did.
We have Paul's letters and the Gospels.
Paul's letters don't confirm anything about the existence of Jesus. As a matter of fact, there are some historians who would hold that Paul doesn't even believe in an actual physical Jesus. I disagree with them, and I think Paul did, or the author that is attributed with Paul for a number of different things. But I don't have any reason to believe that Jesus did any of the things that are attributed to him or said any of the things that are attributed to him.
Okay, so you think Paul believes that Jesus was a real human being?
Yes.
And he was writing about 20 years after the fact. So what could cause you to doubt that Jesus was real?
Did Paul ever meet Jesus? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
He casually makes a reference to meeting his brother.
No, he didn't. He didn't meet Jesus. Okay, that's what I thought. I was just making sure. I feel that if
Sure.
Paul didn't meet Jesus, if he was just writing about him after the fact, it's safe to say that in Paul's head, it was just a legend. You may, use other people as evidence that, people of that time believed it or whatever, but I don't see how Paul believing in Jesus is any different than anybody else who had never met Jesus.
Okay. That's
Now,
interesting.
are you gonna defend what you believe and why we should believe it? Because if your whole point was to whine about anti-Jewish sentiment, go take it up with the people who believe the book and hold anti-Jewish sentiments. That's not my problem.
Well, I'll tell you what I believe, and it's that Jesus was a Jew, just like his disciples, and it's plausible to me that he had some disagreements, maybe even some somewhat vicious disagreements with Jews.
I'm
And
sorry,
later on,
Alfred.
his
When I ask what it is that you believe and whether or not we should believe it, I'm
I'm
not
telling
looking
you,
for you to describe what you think has happened historically. You believe in a God. You're calling in as a theist. Do you think Jesus performed miracles?
that's too personal.
That's too personal. Why did you call a show to whine about something? And then when asked if you believe, while acknowledging you're a theist, are you a Christian?
Yes.
Then why aren't you doing what you're supposed to do under 1 Peter 3:15, to be prepared at all times to give the justification for the faith that's within you? Why is it that you seem to be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the power unto salvation? Why is it that you are not
Not
defending your
ashamed.
Christian beliefs here?
Lay it on us. You said it's too personal. So the gospel says you need to, spread the word, tell people why you believe what you believe, and attest to it. So tell us why, or what is it exactly that brought you to where you are in the first place?
I'm just my whole the reason I called in was because of the anti-Jewish polemic.
I don't give a
We're
shit.
like
How many times
living.
do I have to explain to you, Alfred, that I don't give a shit about that topic? Why are you afraid to defend your own beliefs about Christianity? Why did you call in if it's
I'm
too personal? You're not a fucking co-host here. This is not your soapbox. Are you going to defend your beliefs or are we going to hang up?
Looks like you're going to hang up. May I ask a
Correct.
question before I leave?
No, you can't, because you haven't done anything to
Please.
deserve to ask a question.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Goodbye. How sad. So here we are. We've got this show. We give theists priority. We have exactly one theist caller calling in. And the only thing he wants to do is, as a Christian, complain about how other Christians aren't adequately wrestling with the anti-Jewish sentiment in the New Testament. Call a Christian show and talk to them. I don't have an anti-Jewish sentiment. I certainly don't have any anti-Jewish sentiment that's rooted in the New Testament, nor am I advocating for one. Why didn't you call in, by the way, to talk about the anti-woman sentiment throughout the entire Bible? Why didn't you call in to complain about the pro-slavery sentiment, the pro-inherited sin sentiment? Is all that too personal? I'm sorry that you have your pet little issue, but it's not our issue. Owen, are you harboring anti-Jewish sentiment from the New Testament? I mean,
No,
you've actually talked about it before.
I have. Yeah, no, I'm not. The New Testament definitely has kind of anti-Jewish sentiment, of course, and it has been used by like the Pope to justify, atrocities and all of that. But again, it's not really it's not on us to solve that, really. It's something that needs to be solved within the Christian community, seems to me, right?
Yeah. And it would be, and I know that there are, for example, like ecumenical councils and things like that, where you'll get Jews and Christians together to talk about, hey, Jews don't believe Jesus was the Messiah, generally speaking. Some do, but now those are, Christians to some extent, Jews for Jesus. But Judaism is the foundation of Christianity. And the story, as it's written, is certainly problematic for the Jewish leadership, Sadducees, Pharisees, the Sanhedrin, there's loads and loads of issues that this promotes an anti-Jewish sentiment among Christians is virtually undeniable, but it's certainly not the case for every Christian or every denomination or everybody who looks at the book. But I don't have a dog in that fight. Not that anybody should have a dog in any fight.
It's not really an issue in the United States today as much as in other places. Like in Europe in the past 200 years or even the past 1,000 years has been a big problem. But Protestants in the U.S. have very much fallen on the other side, where there's like this kind of an obsession with the Jewish community and their role in prophecy and everything else. That's in part why Israel exists in the first place, because of the support of the United States and the Christian kind of undertones behind it. So it is a problem kind of on a worldwide scale, but not so much for us, not as much.
It's a bizarre call, though, because right off the bat, here's an individual for whom, this is too personal. I don't believe that the caller was for real. I believe that was another prank caller, because when I say that I'm not concerned about that, the first thing is, is it because the victims are religious? No, you fucking troll. It's not because the victims are religious. It's because this is not my issue. I'm not here to fix Christianity. I'm here to end it or force it to demonstrate that it's true. And so if the only thing that I have concerns about is, hey, is what the story says true? If, give us Barabbas. Well, that's certainly enough to fault some people, not Jews, but some people. But we have no reason to think that any elements of the story are sufficiently true to reach a conclusion about it. We don't have sufficient reason to believe a miracle, certainly. But we also don't have reason to believe the census of Quirinius and Herod. That whole element of the story is just absolute nonsense. And so when you make a list of all the things that are associated with Jesus and Jesus's life, the number of things that we can confirm is pretty much zero. There are things that it might be reasonable to just accept or take on their word. Like historians, when they look at this, they like, this is an individual who's spoken about as if he existed by other people who existed. So we will just presume that person existed. And there very well may have been a Jesus. I'm not a mythicist. I'm not asserting that Jesus didn't exist. My position is that it's problematic to try to assert that he existed. But even if we assume that there was some real person there, hang on, I'm going to ban this liar in chat. Cool. If we assert that he did exist, and the next step is to figure out, what did he say? What did he do? I don't know how to do that. And certainly, if you're a Christian and you're bothered by the fact that New Testament is inspiring some anti-Jewish sentiment, you need to take it up with other Christians. You know what else you need to do? The Bible as a whole, the Jewish and Christian aspects of it, have an anti-woman sentiment. Are you worried about that, Alfred? Are you ready to call in and defend the anti-woman sentiment? Why'd you pick this issue? But
totally agreed.
Yeah, it's wild. We have atheist callers as well. If you're a theist, or if you have, once again, if you have a belief that you want to defend that we don't share, like a belief in a God, a belief in supernatural, you will be put right to the head of the queue. You'll come in and we'll make atheists sit here for 3 hours if we have to. In the meantime, though, Arvid is calling from Sweden. Arvid's an atheist, pronouns are he, him. Something about an argument against divine powers based on a lack of persuasion. What's going on, Arvid? What do you got?
Hey Matt, hi Owen. It's great to talk to you both. The argument, in short, I have a sort of colloquial version of it, and I've also tried to make a syllogism for it, but I don't know if it's very good. But it's more about the divine inspiration or divine power of the Bible itself, rather than the Christian God.
Okay, go for it.
All right.
So start with the colloquial argument. The Bible, according to both scripture and a lot of religious people and religious organizations, is inspired by God and is meant to bring people to God. That the word of God in the Bible will inspire people to either believe in God or join in whatever religion or whichever version of, whether it's Catholicism or which one it is. But of course, the Catholics have the missionaries, which also espouse this. But there are large failures to do this where you would expect otherwise. And I have a strong example of this. To go on, there is this country. It's been Christian for about 1,000 years and had Christianity as a state religion for about 500 years.
Which country is it?
It's my country, it's Sweden, and it stopped, and it was the state religion until the year 2000.
All right.
And around the 1800s, the percentage of Christianity within Sweden was somewhere between 90% and maybe 95%, somewhere around there. And around now, we have about 40% of the Swedish population say that directly that they're atheists. But if you simply say non-religious, according to the studies, it's up to about 60%. And then we have, how many are Christian and believe in it, and how many are perhaps culture Christian.
Right.
But there has been no real counterculture in Sweden against Christianity or against the Bible. There simply isn't the sort of direct pressure that you might see in other countries such as where the missionaries went, where there were direct threats or incentives. And I feel like this is a good indication against the strength of the Bible being divinely inspired.
So you're saying that evidence against the Bible being divinely inspired is the fact that, basically, correct me if I'm wrong, that Christianity just kind of faded away on its own in your country? Is that right?
Well, my country is definitely an example, but I feel like it should be more or less a direct fact whether or not it is divinely inspired, because it should have a very strong persuasive power, unless you can point to a specific sort of counterforce.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Bible, there could be like a God that had it written and then just walked away or whatever, like a deistic, maybe maybe Yahweh, the Christian God specifically, is more deistic, where he just creates it and doesn't have any other part in it. But we do know that people pray for their car keys and stuff and claim that happens. When we test miracles, we can see that it happens at the exact rate of random chance, basically. So there's no reason to believe that a God is involved in the process anywhere along the line. But I don't think that proves that there is no God necessarily. I use, other kind of arguments or other reasoning to come to that conclusion, which is there is no evidence at all. If we saw that, that would be a piece of evidence in favor of it. But not seeing it is not evidence against it.
The other thing is, there are people who become convinced because of the Bible, and there are people who don't become convinced because of the Bible. That is completely separate and independent from whether or not they should be convinced. And the ones that are convinced and the ones that are advocating for it think that they absolutely should be convinced, and that all the rest of us God has either given us over to a reprobate mind, or this is why within philosophy there's this concept of a non-resistant non-believer, that you are not putting up some roadblock intentionally denying the truth. So to say, hey, we would have expected the Bible to be more convincing than it is, I would agree that if in fact the Bible was directly inspired by some incredibly, it doesn't even have to be all powerful, all knowing, just someone with knowledge and wisdom beyond humans, then it should absolutely be more compelling in the sense of not, oh, it needs to convince Matt or it needs to convince Owen, but in the same way that vaccine science is compelling and the evidence for the moon landing. People can still be opposed to vaccines for bad reasons, and they can think that we didn't land on the moon or any number of things. But when you look at the case for them objectively, the arguments are valid and seem to be sound in the sense that we're going to accept those premises. And to just say, hey, we would have expected, look at Sweden. It had Christianity for 1,000 years. It was state religion for 500 years. And now, belief has diminished to next to nothing. That doesn't tell us anything at all about the Bible. That tells us about the state. Maybe the problem is when you make it a state religion, people don't care about it as much because they don't have the option. When there's been an argument actually that one of the reasons Christianity is as powerful it is in places like the United States is that we have freedom of religion. And so there's competition, and competition allows people to try out different things. And I think it may, in fact, embolden religions. Whereas if you look at like the UK, where you have, England, you have Church of England, and elsewhere you have others. But the lack of competition has gotten it so that a lot of people just don't give a shit about it. And so maybe Sweden having a state religion for 500 years got it to where it's like, oh, okay, I can't be anything else. And I'll just go along with this, but I don't really care. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And my argument definitely wasn't specified around God, just this sort of divine inspiration of the Bible. I think you mentioned that you somewhat agree there that if it actually was divinely inspired, we would perhaps see something differently. I'm just afraid that the argument itself is very facile. It's easy for a believer to reject because it doesn't really have any weight, even though it makes a lot of sense, in my opinion.
Well, even if the Bible were a steaming pile of crap, that wouldn't in any way demonstrate whether or not a God is real.
No, exactly.
And even if there was a God who tried to inspire a book, but it fell apart because of, something to do with mankind, that wouldn't demonstrate that there's not a God, but it would demonstrate that there's not a God who is capable of communicating effectively with humans. Because you can't have a God that is capable of communicating when there's no clear communication. I mean, there's something else in the way there. And so at a minimum, I think you're right in that when it comes to the stories in the Bible, in both the Old Testament and the New Testament, I don't have good reason to think that those stories are true, but I have no problem accepting that they're tied to real people and their attempts to explain reality. Hey, we need, why is there something rather than nothing? Ooh, well, a long, long time ago, before the galaxy was far, far away, Jesus was part of God, and God said, "Let there be light." It's a story that some people take more metaphorically and allegorically than others, and some are going to take more literally. I don't care which one people are taking it as, if they can demonstrate that it's real and true. For example, the Christians who kind of like the New Age Christians, the gay-friendly church that ignores the verses about homosexuality, and they just want to love it. Either they focus on Jesus as turn the other cheek and love thy neighbor as thyself. And so they pick out those elements, and they're like, the rest of that is just the floundering of people who tried to understand God but couldn't because we're incapable of it. And so the real story to take out of it is to love each other. Those people are a very different version of Christianity than what I was involved with. And they are on weaker grounds, epistemologically, with regard to the claims in the Bible. But they are on much better grounds. They're on much better grounds when it comes to being a good person and, advocating for something that we could all appreciate. And if there was a God, I would like to think that God would be more interested in us caring about each other and supporting each other than kneeling to pray 5 times a day while facing a particular direction, or covering ourselves up with something, or making sure that, women can't have property in the same way that men can have property, or that 2 people of the same gender shouldn't have sex. But that's about what God I would prefer. That's not about what God is real. And so, the big question just becomes, how do you demonstrate that the God you believe in is real? I'm sorry, Arvid, I went off on a sermon there, but
that's completely fine. It did sort of remind me of a thing about the whole metaphorical or if literal and what to take away from it. Because I think that might be also one of the both strengths and weaknesses of the Swedish church, is that it's this very milquetoast Protestant branch where it's very much about love and community and acceptance. And whilst it's not perfectly caught up with perhaps the most secular humanitarian values, it's getting pretty close compared to perhaps more orthodox versions. And perhaps that goes against its persuasiveness somehow. I'm not sure. I have no clue.
Yep, I don't know.
Well, thanks for listening to my argument and responding to it.
Sure. Thanks, Arvid. Appreciate the call.
Hey, Matt, on that note,
Yes,
you said you think that the Bible is, or you think that the Christian God would be anti-gay, right?
Yes.
Okay. I would argue it's not as anti-gay as one might think. The New Testament, Old Testament, clearly, but the New Testament wasn't really talking about what we understand as gay. What do you think of the argument?
I don't accept that. But what's
Why?
the reason?
Because, all right.
It makes a
Go
distinction between, there's a distinction between men having sex with men and women having sex with women. And that distinction is kind of expanded in there. But when you read like Romans, where it says God gave them up to their vile afflictions, for their women did change the natural use that is which against their nature, and likewise also the men leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one towards another, men with men working, which is unseemly. So that's pretty clearly in opposition to homosexual acts.
It's true. However, I've been listening to Bart Ehrman, and I don't want to misrepresent his argument, so I'll say that this is my argument, not his. I may be misunderstanding, but to my knowledge, I think that the Romans verse isn't really about, it's more about being the passive participant in the equation, and it doesn't really have anything against, it was more about being manly, not about being gay. That's my understanding of it. Have you heard that argument before?
Yeah, but there's a lot of other verses as well. I mean,
I think
there's more
three
in
are
Romans where, God gave them over to reprobate mind without natural affliction. They commit such things that are worthy of death. And so that reference of they're committing something that's worthy of death is a direct reference to the Old Testament saying if a man lies with another man as he lies with a woman, they're deserving of death. But in Corinthians, it's the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom, neither fornicators, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind. So there's a distinction there between effeminate and abusers of themselves with mankind shall inherit the kingdom of God. And then Jude references Sodom and Gomorrah and the issues of fornication and everything else. But even if the New Testament isn't quite as anti-gay as the Old Testament clearly is,
right?
If the Christian view is that this is the same God, the unchanging God, the same as it ever is, ever was, etc., Jesus had an opportunity to say, hey, that stuff you guys learned from Scripture about homosexuality, that was wrong. That's not what my position is or what the Father's position is. Same as it could have done with slavery. And so there are people who are like, oh, Jesus was much better about slavery than the Old Testament was. But I'm not convinced that he was. And Paul certainly wasn't, because Paul's only opposition to slavery was that he had a friend who was a slave that he asked to be released. But for everybody else, it's, obey your slaves, obey your masters in the Lord, for this is right, etc. If, for example, in Luke 17, in that night there shall be two men in one bed, the one shall be taken and the other shall be left. Two women shall be grinding together, the one shall be taken and the other left. That is a verse that almost makes people go, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not, homosexuality or the homosexual acts, because clearly if you got two women grinding together, but it's everything about female homosexual acts is treated differently every time it's discussed, because women are subhuman beneath their property.
That's fascinating. Yeah, totally. I can get on board with that Jesus had an opportunity to kind of shoot it down and chose not to. I kind of say the same thing about like Jehovah's Witnesses and blood transfusions. Jesus had an opportunity to pretty clearly distinguish that, say, I'm not eating this meat because it had, or I'm not getting a blood transfusion. So he could have hinted something, anything at all, and he chose not to. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It is. I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, well, the New Testament isn't as anti-gay. And one of the things is, if that's true, you now have to solve the problem of a conflict between what God thinks in the Old Testament and what God thinks in the New Testament. And you and I are, we both know that conflict exists in a number of different ways. For example, the Jewish notion of death and afterlife is incredibly vague. It's like in the Old Testament, it's when you're dead, you sleep with your fathers. There's not a lot of thought of you are living some existence. There's not a conversation about a heaven or a paradise or a hell. It's kind of like you're sleeping with your fathers. And so they're viewing it there. And then in the New Testament, it starts to get a little different, and then it gets weird. And then you've got the things that we pulled from like the Apocalypse of Peter, that should be canon, but isn't. And so I remember years ago, I did a lecture on hell. And it's like, here's where the Old Testament got worse, because at least like if you were a Jew and you picked up sticks on the Sabbath and God killed you, you were just dead. It's not like you were also going to be tormented and tortured forever for picking up sticks on the Sabbath. And then the New Testament comes along and adds this expansion, not just an expansion to Scripture, but an expansion to the punishment of seemingly forever.
Yeah, and of course, like original sin was modified and added in and everything as time progressed and all that. Definitely, it's fascinating how it's kind of morphed over time, and people just don't want to like admit it or accept it. Kind of crazy.
All right, so we
lose somebody.
Yeah, there was somebody who was calling in to tell me that I was wrong about 1 Peter 3:15, and then they hung up.
Oh.
So I'm not wrong about 1 Peter 3:15. By the way, for those who don't know, you can go read 1 Peter 3:15, and I recommend that you also do it with a really good Bible dictionary and concordance, cross-referencing it. And from the King James, it is, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts and be ready always to give an answer to every man that asketh you a reason of the hope that's within you, with meekness and fear. Now, the King James says meekness and fear. Other versions say with gentleness and reverence, or gentleness and kindness. But basically, it is saying you are to be ready at all times to give the reason for the faith that's within you. And the reason there, the Greek word in the KJV is logos. This is not just, oh, my reason for believing is because God has privately revealed itself to me, or because I feel it in my heart. Logos ties to a logical apologetic at some level, not necessarily that you have to have a, completely valid and sound structured syllogism, because I doubt many of them actually had a good understanding of that. But I use it, and will continue to point out that this is essentially where one of a handful of verses that put forward the Great Commission. Go ye therefore unto all the nations, proclaiming, blah, blah, blah. And it's something that I took seriously when I was a Christian, but I didn't always take it seriously. I took it seriously as a convenience. Early on, when I was active in church all the time, I would be out witnessing with everybody else, and I would do the Monday night visitation to the people who showed up on Sunday on church. And I would be talking to my friends at school about, hey, here's what we're doing at church, and trying to invite them and saying, oh, I'm a Christian because. Then when I got a little older and I was having a number of issues related to my belief, I was not always ready to give a defense, because it became harder and harder to defend. The more I learned and understood about it, it became harder and harder to defend. When you were a believer, because you were Jehovah's Witness, how much different? I was Southern Baptist. How different is the kind of apologetics thinking that you had compared to what I dealt with?
Oh, what you were describing is surprisingly similar, just kind of the culture to what I experienced. But the apologetics, I think they're fairly similar. However, they have some very specific beliefs about some very specific things, like the no blood thing, right? Like, you have to memorize a whole bunch of different verses to explain why you don't take blood transfusions. You got to be able to whip it out at any moment. And you also explain why you don't accept the Trinity, why you think that, Jesus and God were separate or whatever. So there are a lot of like differences, minor differences, but the things that they have in common, I think, are pretty, across the board, like very similar. I remember going to somebody's door and arguing with them. They said they were apostolic. I had no idea what that meant, but they were like, telling me that God's name is Jehovah, but they handle snakes and all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know. Did you ever do that?
Well, I handle snakes every day, but not as part of a religion thing.
Well, he did. So anyway, yeah, to answer your question more directly, pretty similar in the ways that they are similar. The apologetics are similar, I'd say. The strategies.
Cool. Well, we've got callers, including theist callers, and we're just going to start right off the bat with Steve, who's been on hold the longest. Steve's a theist from, I guess, Nebraska, pronouns are he, him, who says the Bible is not pro-slavery because biblical slaves were prisoners of war whom the Israelites domesticated in order to keep God's temple intact until Christ's ultimate sacrifice for our sin. Hey, Steve, welcome.
Yeah, happy holidays, y'all. I was going to research here to call in line this rest of this year until I heard you, Matt, label the Bible as pro-slavery when really, in fact, I think it's a pro-liberation from sin.
Well, you're reframing it, but the Bible is absolutely supportive of slavery. It says that you shall buy your slaves from the heathen that surround you, that they are your property, that they can be inherited by your children, and that you can beat them as long as they don't die within a couple of days.
Well, I think that for the most part, would you not agree that they were imprisoned from war rather than just randomly being captured and enslaved?
First of all, I don't know why that matters, because we have learned that prisoners of war shouldn't be slaves. But no, at no point does it mean, or does it point to only prisoners of war. However, the Bible also had the Jews running around slaughtering anybody that God told them they could take their shit. So you have compounded immorality here, but at no point does the Bible say you shall only enslave prisoners of war. But even if it did, that would also be immoral.
Well, didn't they have
are you aware that there are two sets of rules? One set of rule for your Hebrew slaves and one set of rule for your non-Hebrew slaves. Were those Hebrew slaves prisoners of war as well?
I am aware that Hebrew slavery ended when the temple became defunct.
I'm sorry. Are you going to answer my actual question, or are you going to give excuses?
No, I'm answering your question. Go ahead. What was your question again?
You're aware that there's a completely different set of rules for Hebrew slaves as opposed to non-Hebrew slaves, right?
Right. Yeah. One was indentured servitude and the other was for prisoners of war. Of course.
No, it's not indentured servitude, which is also immoral. It is one set of rules for Hebrew slaves and one set of rules for Gentile slaves.
Well, as I understand, the Israelites had trumpeters. They would blast a trumpet and gave people the chance to flee, to get out of the God's chosen people's way.
I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in excuses. I'm interested in what the Bible actually says. The Bible has one set of rules for Hebrew slaves, including how you can trick them to be your slaves forever. Correct?
I will have to look into that. I'm not going to agree on that yet.
So you haven't read Exodus 21 then?
I skimmed the Bible a long time ago. I can't remember all that.
Maybe you shouldn't call and pretend that you understand it better than the people who didn't fucking skim it. Here we go. Exodus 21. Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years shall he serve, and in the 7th he shall go out free for nothing. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go with him. But if his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and children shall remain the master's, and the slave shall go out by himself. But if he says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go free, then his master brings him before the judges, bring him to the door or the doorpost, bore his ear with an awl, basically pierce his ear, and he shall serve him forever. So the rules for Hebrew slaves are that you have to let them go after 6 years. And if it was indentured servitude, that means that every bit of indentured servitude carries with it the exact same 6-year slavery thing. But that's also immoral, and indentured servitude is immoral. But if in fact you give your Hebrew slave a wife and he doesn't want to leave his wife and kids because they're your property forever already, because there's a different standard for women than there is for men, then he has to come and say, I want to stay a slave, at which point he becomes a slave forever, just like the Gentiles. Now, I know the Christians and the Jews will point out, in the year of Jubilee, every 50 years, all the slaves were freed. Congratulations. In a time period where people weren't living particularly long, I don't think it's really a redemption at all to say that we let our slaves go after 50 years or every 50 years we freed all the slaves. There's a set of rules for Hebrew slaves, including how to trick them to be your slaves forever. And there's a different set of rules further down in that exact same chapter, Exodus 21, that talks about Gentile slaves. And it continues in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. How is this moral? Would you be my slave under the biblical rules for slavery?
Well, what other choice? It was a lesser of evil. Yeah, it was wrong, but it was a lesser of two evils.
No, it's not.
The other option would be they would die in battle.
Did God inspire the Bible?
Yes.
Did he inspire the passages about slavery?
I think it was written for the times. What was best for the times?
That's not what I asked. See, if you just answer what I ask, this will go much better for you. You'll learn something and you won't look foolish and embarrassed. Did he inspire the verses about slavery?
Well, how would I know if something's God inspired or not? I have no way to know that.
I don't think any of it's inspired by God, but you do. So you're the one with the problem here. And why is it you're making excuses when you say that you believe God inspired the Bible, but when I ask specifically about slavery, now you want to make excuses? Did God inspire the prohibition against eating shellfish?
Those rules just apply to the Leviticus priesthood.
Did God inspire the rules about eating? Did God inspire the rules about eating shellfish? Yes or no?
For the priests of the temple, yes.
Did God? No. For anybody, you're not allowed to eat shellfish. Did God inspire the rules with regard to punishing people for violating the Sabbath?
Well, not for me, no.
Okay, so you don't believe that God inspired aspects of the Bible. Did God inspire the position that you shouldn't wear mixed fabrics?
No, not for me. I can wear whatever I want.
Did God inspire the 10 Commandments?
I mean, Christ changed the
Did God inspire the 10 Commandments?
I don't know.
Okay. You don't know enough, Steve. You probably shouldn't have called.
Okay.
I don't know if Owen has something to answer or to add to this.
It sounds like you know, he kind of. Are you still there, Steve?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. It feels like you don't want to admit or accept that God inspired those verses. Can you accept that they were inspired? I mean, I know that you say that it doesn't apply to you because, you know, there's stuff in the middle, Jesus and the law and all that stuff. But did he inspire those verses? Like all scripture is inspired.
He may have. I can't say definitely he didn't.
Well, the Bible says he did, right? All scripture is inspired of God. That's the only part of the verse I remember, but it's Jehovah's Witnesses.
All spirit is God-breathed and useful for teaching.
Right. So God inspired that, right?
Yeah, I would accept that possibility, sure.
Okay. In that case, why don't you believe, or why do you think that God changed? Why would he have changed his, his outlook or his perspective or his way of doing things or whatever? Isn't he all-knowing and eternal and never changing?
There is no omni-God. How can a God be all-caring and knowing when there's children dying of cancer? So there is a God, it's not an omni-God. I can just punch that in 2 words, childhood cancer.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that, but that's kind of in contradiction to like the whole belief system. In fact, isn't that in contradiction of the Bible? It is, right?
No, the Bible even says God is the creator of all calamity. There's a verse in the Bible, believe me. I know I skimmed the Bible a long time ago, but I recall.
The Lord thy God create mischief. It is not that God is the source of the evil. Humanity's disobedience in the Garden of Eden that brought sin and death into the world is the reason why there is childhood cancer. That's not God's fault.
Okay.
And why would
you have sacrificed everything about Orthodox Christianity, or, you don't believe in an omni-God, all because you're trying to make up your own version. Why is your version better than the one that I grew up with?
Well, I'm not saying my beliefs are any better than yours.
If yours aren't any better than mine, why do you hold them instead of mine?
Well, I have my reasons to.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking for. Why did you call? Go ahead.
I've called in on these before. I'm not going to go into it here. I just called in to say that the Bible's
you're not going to go into it here, which is the whole fucking purpose of the show.
Oh, I've already called in, Matt. I've given my reasons and evidences for my beliefs. My beliefs are evidence-based.
What's the evidence?
Okay.
Was it skimming the Bible?
When you look, because nothing is real until it's measured or observed. Everything's just a quantum wave of probability.
That's not
true.
We're living in a computational universe.
That was a hypothesis or a thought experiment from Schrodinger, of course, and his cat, but it's been there's a study that came out that showed that it does not, in fact, collapse when it's observed. That was an incorrect hypothesis or thought experiment. Unfortunately, I can't
presented it as a
find it
mockery.
right now. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's that was
So
just a thought.
Has God been observed, Steve?
I would say, God, define God.
I don't have a fucking God, Steve. It's your God. I'm asking you about your God. I don't get to define your God. Has your God been observed? Yes or no?
Yes.
When? How?
Okay. Well, I believe in God is technologically advanced extraterrestrials. 20 years ago, the U.S. Navy
I'm beyond done.
Evidence of
I'm beyond done. I'm beyond done, Steve, because you skimmed the Bible. You called, yes, because this is beyond stupid. You called in to say something about the Bible, something you only skimmed and don't know. And now, and by the way, your comment was all about God's temple and Christ's ultimate sacrifice. And now you're going down the ancient alien route, which is beyond ridiculous. If you're not going to defend why you believe in a God, why should I care why you believe in aliens?
Well, it's testable. I mean, they've seen the alien megastructures around stars.
Is this Dirk?
That have been observed. I would say they're pretty powerful if they can make an alien megastructure that can capture most of their stars' energy.
Do you want me to read the emails that you flooded me with this week before I blocked you? Is that what you want? I'll read them if you want. If you just admit that
I didn't send you any emails, but read them anyways. They weren't from me, but go ahead.
If you admit that it's you, Dirk, we'll do that.
No, they're not mine, not from me. I don't know what you're talking about. Honestly.
Got nothing else. So, Owen, is God an alien?
No, I'm sorry, man. There's no evidence for this. There just isn't. I'm willing to, look at any evidence you might have, but, I've been waiting for evidence for, decades now, and it's still not forthcoming. Your beliefs are very reminiscent of, like, the Heaven's Gate beliefs, it feels to me. They were wrong then. There's no evidence of any of this stuff, and I haven't heard literally everything you had to say, but I get the impression that you're wrong now.
Maybe we're wrong, though.
Maybe.
So, if you can, go ahead and tell us what it is that you believe about a God that has been observed and your evidence for it.
I believe there's extraterrestrial intelligence within the genetic code itself, within the very building block of life.
Okay. That's the what. Did you not hear the whole purpose of the show is for you to explain why you believe it and why you think other people should believe it, and that we just specifically asked you for the evidence?
And I've given some evidences.
Not today you haven't. What is it?
Okay, the evidences are in the genetic code, there's mathematical patterns that are artificially generated, not naturally occurring. One.
How do you know? How do you know they're not occurring naturally?
There's a paper that came out about it by a couple of scientists 10 years ago. We even tried to have this discussion.
Steve, I don't need you to say there's a paper. I need you to tell me the reason and then say this reason comes from the paper. Were you this bad at this the last time? Is that why we had a problem? Are we because I don't remember the call at all. Are we rehashing the same thing?
I'm not going to rehash an old call, no.
Because when I say, tell me why you believe, and you say, oh, there's a paper by some scientist somewhere. Do you realize how absolutely pathetic that sounds? If I were to tell you if I were to tell you that there was a paper by some scientist somewhere that proved you're full of shit, would that be impressive at all?
It'd be wrong. Maybe it'd be impressive, but it'd be impressively wrong. No,
I have to tell you
alien spacecraft. We have seen alien megastructures.
You're so fucking dishonest. You're so fucking dishonest. You want to answer the question you're asked?
Well, ask away. I'll try my best.
I already have, Steve. What is the evidence that supports your claim that the genetic code contains mathematical patterns that cannot and did not occur naturally?
It's in a paper titled Wow Signal of the Terrestrial Genetic Code.
Steve, what is the fucking evidence? Don't tell me there's a fucking paper. If you say there's a fucking paper one more fucking time, I will fucking hang up on you. What is the evidence? Can you explain it? Yes or no?
Yes. I can explain.
Cool. Explain it. And start by telling me why you didn't fucking explain it the 3 other fucking times I asked.
Okay. So in the genetic code, if you group together the atomic masses.
No, I'm sorry. You're not listening. I said start by explaining why you didn't give this explanation the 3 other times I've asked. So start there. Why didn't you give this explanation every other time I asked?
Hello.
Yep, we're here.
Yeah, first of all, I'm having some audio issues. So that's the first point I want to make. So I'm not hearing everything that you are saying. So I apologize. That's on my end.
Okay. So why? Why didn't you answer? And why don't you tell us?
Okay. So the evidence that there is the genetic code.
Nope, Steve, I'm going to try this again. I've muted you. I don't know why this is so difficult. I want you to tell us the evidence that there's a mathematical pattern in the genetic code that can't and hasn't occurred naturally. But before you give me that explanation, I want you to explain why you didn't give this explanation all the other times that I asked for this explanation. That's the first thing you need to do.
Well, I don't think I don't think you've ever asked for that from me before.
Steve, I've asked you 3 fucking times in this call and you just said there's a paper. Why didn't you explain it instead of saying there's a paper, even after I pointed out that I wanted you to explain it, instead of saying there's a paper? If you are unable to understand this fucking question, you are wasting everybody's time. So why,
the paper is
when I asked you, shut up. Shut your fucking mouth until I'm done. When I asked previously for the reason, you said there's a paper. And I said, don't tell me there's a paper. Tell me, explain what the evidence is. And then 2 more times you went on to say there's a paper instead of explaining what the evidence is. Why did you do that?
Okay, you want to hear the explanation, the reason, the evidence? Do you want to hear that?
Steve,
you want to just keep going over some points about why I didn't immediately answer a question?
The question that I just fucking asked you is, why did I have to ask you 3 different times before you were willing to give the explanation? Why did you just repeat that there's a paper?
Because that paper is the explanation. It's a detailed.
No, Steve, it's not. Saying there's a paper is not the explanation. I've now explained this to you several times. You will not get to say another fucking word on this show until you explain why, after I explained that I don't want you to tell me about a paper, I want you to explain it, why you continued to say there's a paper instead of explaining it. This is your last chance.
Okay, because I have now the explanation in front of me. So I had to find the explanation. It's on my email.
So basically, you weren't prepared. Did you skim this paper just like you skim the fucking Bible?
No, I've read it a few times.
Then why could you not explain it to us without just saying there's a paper?
Well, I have the explanation now. I had to find the explanation.
I don't want you to look it up. Send me an email, Steve. Send me an email with a link to the paper. That's as much of a shit as I give right now. You have wasted all of my time that you're going to waste. Goodbye. This is really easy, y'all. If we ask a question, it's for a reason. If we're trying to understand what the hell's going on, it's because there's some sort of difficulty in communication. Am I speaking a language that you don't know? Am I using words that you don't understand? If I say, what's the reason? And you say, there's a paper. And I say, just telling me there's a paper, isn't it? I want to know what the explanation is of the paper. And you say, there's a paper. It's very clear that you are not ready for the conversation. And that's fine. But it's not good for the show. It's not going to educate anybody. It's not going to give us any edifying information at all. And when you're saying that there's, first of all, I don't need to look, I will look at your paper when you send it. I don't need to look at your paper to know that it's not true. That the conclusion you've reached from this paper is either not what that paper says or that paper is wrong. Because how would you demonstrate that a sequence is impossible to occur naturally? What other option is there? And how do you know? If you want to say that X is more likely to be supernatural in origin than natural, you have to demonstrate that the supernatural exists, that it can do what you say it can do, and why it is more probable as an explanation than any other natural explanation. But you can't do that. And you can't do some math on the genetic code and just say, wow, this is incredibly unlikely to have happened naturally. Therefore, it's a code and it's a message. And if you're doing the equidistant letter sequence stuff, the Bible code stuff with DNA, you have misunderstood the fundamental nature of patterns and repetition in language. But I want actual theist callers. So we got a good one, I'm hoping. John from Ohio, pronouns him, wants to present his proof of Christ. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, John. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. How are you guys today?
Doing well.
Doing all right.
You guys don't sound as happy as you did when you were believers.
What? I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life.
John, have you ever heard me when I was a believer?
No, but I can tell that you're angry now.
No, John, I'm sorry that I just exposed your entire fucking bullshit lie and your bias and bigotry in 2 seconds. You say, I sound happier, or I sound less happy now than when I was a believer, and yet you never heard me when I was a believer. You didn't know me when I was a believer. So all you're doing is projecting your suspicions about whether or not we're happier. Now, it's entirely possible that I could be happier as a non-believer, or that I could have been happier as a believer, and that's completely independent from whether or not my beliefs were true. I thought you wanted to present your proof for Christ. Can you do that? Or did you call to pretend like you know what's in my mind better than I do?
Well, were you this angry when you were a believer?
I'm sorry, John. The question I asked is, are you going to do what you said you'd do, or are you a fucking liar?
Yes, of course.
Yes, you're a fucking liar. Goodbye, John. All right. I have no patience for liars. If you call to say that you're going to present evidence for Christ, I was so excited to get rid of the space alien genetic code math garbage and get to someone who was actually going to defend Christ. But you know what you did, John? You proved that I was a better Christian than you when I was a believer, and I'm probably still a better Christian than you because I at least could have pretended to defend a thing about Christ without calling in to say, gosh, were you this angry when you were a non-believer? You know what? I might not have been, because I wasn't dealing with liars like you, John. I wasn't having to sit here and have my time and money wasted, because we pay for you to sit on hold so that you can call in and be the worst representative of Christ I've ever met or heard. What fucking nonsensical notion about the Bible suggests that you should call in, 1 Peter 3:15, to do so with meekness and kindness, gentleness and kindness, all that stuff. And you're like, you're much angrier now than you were. You know what I am? I am more irritated that people like you, and who I used to also be, who are incredibly stupid about the religious thing, just like I used to be, have decided that a good use of all of our time is for you to pretend like there's something wrong with the fact that I'm angry, that people like you who don't know anything keep pretending that you do. You don't know what's in my head, and you're not willing to defend Christ. So you're a liar, John. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you call in and say you're going to defend Christ, defend Christ. But all you did was show that here's another Christian who either doesn't know how to defend their belief, doesn't want to defend their belief, would rather just name call and trash talk believers. Your shtick is garbage, John, and you cannot demonstrate the truth of your beliefs. And I know that it really hurts you that you're irrelevant, and that your God is irrelevant, and that your God couldn't give me a hangnail, and that your God lets me sit here and keep talking and exposing you for what you are, a liar and a bigot. Anyway.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh, I bet you could, but we'll get heat for it. Yeah. All right, here we go. Let's try this again. Theist callers, we've got Vargas calling from Texas. Vargas pronouns he, him. Sola Scriptura's rejection of traditions guiding hand unleashes the winds of chaotic interpretation, leading souls astray into the abyss of atheism. Vargas, I genuinely have no idea what you're calling about, so welcome to the show. Okay, I suspected as much. That's a web caller, a prank caller. Sweet. I'm glad that you spent 30 minutes on hold to do absolutely nothing. Are there any theists left? Did we accidentally convert everybody and help them free themselves to the point where there's nobody left who will even make a vague, honest attempt to defend? I mean, to defend Jesus, to defend Jehovah, to defend Vishnu, to defend L. Ron Hubbard, Dianetics. Let's try again. Johnny's calling from California. Pronouns are he, him. Thank you so much. Johnny wants to tell us why he believes in God. First question I have, Johnny, and then we'll let you get to it, is, do you think that your reason for believing God is one that we should also convince us, or is it just one that convinced you?
Good morning. This is my first time calling, and I am new to your show. I just started last week. First, I just want to say thank you for you guys, what y'all do, open a communication between everyone. I love this. And to answer your questions, for me, is something, my reasons, what I've seen, what I've experienced is what made me believe, and hopefully I can just share it. Not trying to convert, not trying to convince, but it's what made me.
Johnny?
Hello?
The question I asked was,
Sorry.
Is this merely the reason that you believe, or do you think that we should also believe for this reason?
It's what made me believe.
Okay. This is not a show for you to call in and preach or give your personal testimony. You can call into a Christian show and do that. This is a show. Why are you talking? This is a show where you call in and defend, present what you believe and why. And in particular, I started the show by pointing out that it needs to be a reason why you think others should believe it too, like why we should believe. Because if God revealed himself to you privately, clearly that does me no good, right?
Of course.
So what good would it be for you to explain to me that why you believe if it's not a reason for me to believe?
As I was trying to say, it's it's not a personal experience. It's not like God just appeared towards me and be like, believe in me, or that I pray for some keys. No, it's from what I've questioned, what I studied, from reading the Bible, and from everything I see is what I want to say, like why
Johnny,
there is a God.
Wow, I don't know why this is so difficult. This is not the personal testimony show. This is the defend your belief show. Oh my God.
I am defending my belief.
Why are you fucking talking? I'm trying to explain this to you. You have a reason for believing, and you don't think that reason should convince me or Owen. Is that correct?
No, I hope it's to convince you guys.
Okay, then present the reason that you would hope would convince the rest of us. That's the purpose of the show. That's what I asked from the beginning. Is this just why you believe, or is this why you think other people should believe? And you suggested that it wasn't why you think other people should believe, that it was just why you believe. If you think we should believe, present the reason why you think we should believe in God.
Well, first, if we go towards the science of it, we can actually see, as in the Bible, in the Book of Psalms, it talks about how God created us through DNA, and it's
No,
even
it doesn't.
stated.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. The Bible does not mention DNA at all.
In Psalm 139:15, and my frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, integrated, woven in the depths of the earth.
139:15. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and intricately woven in the depths of the. I don't understand. What does that have to do with DNA? That's completely unconnected.
That's actually speaking about DNA, how he created
No,
us.
it doesn't. It doesn't mention. It doesn't mention DNA. You are looking at it, and because you already know about DNA, you are inserting. This isn't exegesis; it's intergesis. You are inserting your understanding into the Bible when it doesn't say that at all.
That's a good point.
I'm not seeing it at all. Like, not even a little. I'm not even sure how you got there. This has nothing. This isn't even connected to DNA, like, in any way. I can't even, like, stretch it to kind of fit that. So I'm not sure where you got it from.
From, like I said, from growing up and reading through it. But then I could still move on towards, as we all know, like, Jesus was the real person. Now, has he done?
So here's the thing. You started by thinking that you had a science, something in the Bible was scientifically confirmed. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Also, the order of events in the creation story in Genesis does not match what the science shows. So after we already objected to the science, why would your next argument, is your next argument better?
No, if we go back to the order of,
I'm sorry, is your next argument better?
Oh, I hope so. For me, it's better.
Then why didn't you start with that? Why didn't you start with your best argument?
For me, I thought proof of DNA would have been the best argument.
So you thought it was best, and now we've shown it's not the best. You're hoping this one's the best.
Yes.
Okay. What's the next one?
Well, if we go for, as you mentioned, on the order of events when it comes to the creationism, it still shows the same as the Big Bang. When God said, "Let there be light,"
no, it doesn't.
Big Bang,
the order of events in the creation account does not match science. In Genesis, the order is a beginning, a primitive earth in darkness, and then light, and then an expanse or atmosphere, and then dry land, and then land plants, and then the sun, the moon, and the stars, then sea monsters and flying creatures, then wild and tame beasts and mammals, and then man. But the real order is that there was a beginning, then light, then sun and stars, then a primitive earth, moon, and atmosphere, then dry land, then sea creatures, then some land plants, then land creatures, then flying creatures, then mammals, then birds, fruiting plants, and man and more. Your Bible has things in the wrong order that don't match the order of science. It has an earth that exists before there's light, which does not match the science, Big Bang or otherwise.
So look, we've just kind of poked a couple of holes in your arguments here. Does that kind of change your perspective on this at all? Like, now that, let's say hypothetically, you were completely incorrect about the DNA thing and about the order of creation thing. Are you still a believer? And if so, why wouldn't that move you over? Like, if those things were invalidated, why do you still believe this? Did we lose you?
Oh, no, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Why do I sorry, I was thinking about the question first. Have to listen and because with everything.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, with everything that been going on and happening and we can see it from the history in the Bible, and it shows us it showed us the right way to be living, and and plus the beautiful creation around the earth. God, I'm so nervous.
So hang on, Johnny, and I apologize. I bet Owen's getting ready to say exactly the same.
No, you're good. Go.
So you start with the Bible talks about DNA, and then we showed it doesn't talk about DNA. Yeah. Then we move on to the order of creation, which you think it got right, and then we show that it doesn't get it right. And now you're saying it's because of all the things we've seen, and the Bible showed us the right way to live. Is slavery the right way to live? Is it right for women to be inferior and second-class citizens?
Of course, slavery was not the right way to live, and of course,
the Bible
not supposed to live there.
The Bible advocates for slavery and holds women as second-class citizens. They can't own property to the same extent. They don't have the same rights as men. Their value and testimony isn't the same, and their requirements are not the same. And that's just the beginning. But absolutely, the Bible endorses slavery. So what does the Bible teach us about living right that you think is enough to conclude that there's a God?
So when we go to the slavery part, which I love how you bring it up, that was actually a real thing that happened during that time, which is great that the Bible shows it, because it shows like during the earth we were living in, something bad did happen. God didn't endorse it.
Yes, he does.
I would say God. It's not that he endorsed it, but he gave regulations when it comes to it. If you guys going to do this, you guys going to do this right.
Well, no, okay.
It was
so God's saying if you want to do this, you're going to do it right. Why doesn't God say that about rape? Yeah.
We're going to hold up on the rape part.
No, I'm saying, listen and think.
Yeah.
You're saying that God decided if you guys are going to engage in slavery, which is morally wrong, instead of saying it's morally wrong and prohibiting it, I'm going to say, go ahead and do it, but I'm going to add some regulations. Why doesn't God do the same thing for rape and say, you guys are going to go ahead and do it anyway, so I'll just add some regulations on it? By the way, he does, but.
Yeah, he does. But I thought I can't even answer that one today. Like my whole thing was on the slavery part right now.
Okay. Does the Bible tell you who to enslave, how you can enslave them, how much to pay for them, how to trick your Jewish slaves into being permanent slaves, how to treat your Gentile slaves, that you can beat them as long as they don't die within a couple of days, and that they are your property that you can pass on to your kid? Does the Bible advocate for all of those things?
Yes, the Bible has all those things, and yes, it was from
are all of those things. Are all of those things immoral?
Yes, all of those things are immoral.
Were those things sanctioned by God?
Yes, those things were sanctioned by God.
So you are saying that God sanctioned immoral things. How is that different from the devil? How do you know that God is the good one? How do you know that God is the good one and the devil is the evil one?
Well, God gave us the free will, and we're the one who decided on slavery. God in the same book.
No. God specifically says you shall buy your slaves from the heathen that surround you, and you've just said that instead of saying this is forbidden, did God forbid mixed fabrics and shellfish? Did God forbid lying? Did God forbid murder?
God forbid killing, not murder.
No, he didn't. Yes. No, he didn't. You're wrong. God forbid murder, not killing. You have to kill to eat.
Exactly. Kill to eat. But if you say murder, then we're just murdering animals for nothing. Henceforth, it's killing.
No.
Oh no! I'm sorry. No, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. You are right.
I know I'm right. You got it reversed in your head. So here's the thing.
Yes, I got it reversed in my head. Yeah, sorry about that.
I already got it. You don't have to keep telling me. We already got it. So If
So when
God
it
can
comes to
outlaw,
slavery,
if
God
God
actually,
can outlaw,
God
if
actually
God can
freed.
outlaw, if God can outlaw murder, why can't he say, thou shalt not own another human being as property?
And that's why Jesus came in, trying to push us away from
I'm
that. But before
sorry,
we get to that one, God actually
no,
sent
no, no,
sent the
no, no,
freedom
no,
of the
Johnny,
slaves.
no, Johnny, no. This is the Old Testament. There is no Jesus. And by the way, Jesus never does anything to correct the Old Testament's views on slavery. So my question was, if God can say, thou shalt not bear false witness, why can't God say, thou shalt not own another human being as property?
When, but before that one, God actually sent someone to free the slaves.
No, I'm sorry, Johnny. You have to focus and answer the question that I'm actually asking you and not keep deflecting, because God didn't send somebody to free the slaves. God sent Moses to free the Israelites. That's special treatment for his chosen people. Then he tells the Israelites who they can enslave and how they can enslave them. But what I asked was, if God can say, thou shalt not bear false witness, why can't, and thou shalt not murder, why can't God say, thou shalt not own people's property? And instead, God says, thou shalt own people's property.
And on top of that, you've given us 3 reasons that you believe in God now. The third of which was it teaches us a moral way to live, but it doesn't, right? I mean, we've pretty much, that's the nail in the coffin. So that's the third reason that you had for accepting the Bible. But for the record, even if it did teach us a moral way to live, that wouldn't be reason to believe in all of the supernatural stuff around it. It would just, I mean, and you know, any of the good things that it does teach, those good things existed for like ever before the Bible. Like the golden rule is as old as time. So why do you believe in God and accept the Bible and believe that it's the inspired word of God and all of that stuff, if we're not counting the 3 reasons that you've given so far? I'm pretty confident in saying that they've been invalidated. Are you confident? Are you happy with that, saying that those reasons are invalidated?
Yes.
Okay, so what is there another? Is it just like because you feel? Is it just like a feeling, or what is it?
No, it's not a feeling for me. It was on discovery, but those three that I tried to put up, you guys shot it down. And not, as I said before, I grew up Catholic, but then my grandparents showed me another way, and then I had to question everything, so I had to restart. But now speaking to you guys, now I have to go and restart again.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I hope that you kind of
I'm not gonna
take
lie,
another.
yeah.
And to be fair,
go ahead.
What you're doing, what's happening right now with you, Johnny, is what happened with me, only mostly on my own, because there wasn't a call-in show to actually engage with. So I had to ask myself the difficult questions. And my entire goal at the time that I found my way out was to be a better representative of Christ. Because my roommate was an atheist, and I was like, ooh, I don't want him to go to hell. I definitely don't want to get to heaven and have God say, why is this guy who you love like a brother burning in hell? Why didn't you tell him? Why didn't you share? And I knew that I had to have good reasons to defend it. And I used to come up with the exact same type of arguments and thoughts that you're coming up with. In part because of how I was raised. Oh, I just kind of believe the Bible. And even when the Bible's difficult, it was, well, that's because there's an error in there from humans, but underneath it's still God. And then the question is, how do you know that? If there's errors in it, how do you tell which ones are errors and which ones aren't? And what is the reason for thinking that any of it ties to an actual God? Do we have some sort of evidence for that outside? And I came up with nothing.
So you're going to reevaluate, you think? And I mean, if you have more reasons, we want to hear those reasons. It's just, we've been sitting here for years. I mean, Matt's been doing this for how long? Since 2000s, right? And we've heard all of the reasons, all of them, and
But-
pretty much, it's all the same.
But what we don't always hear is someone who's willing to be honest and say, hey, here's what I believe. And then when it's countered, go, oh yeah. And good on Owen for highlighting that, because I'll tell you right now, in complete honesty, Johnny, I try not to get jaded. I genuinely just want to have the good conversation, the calls. But after 20 years, it didn't even occur to me to ask you to acknowledge that the arguments had been countered and that we needed to go back to the drawing board, because it almost never happens. And this is one of the reasons why I love having Owen on and doing the show with Owen, because Owen thought to ask that, because that's the right thing to ask. It's, are we making any progress? Did this make sense? So I guess the next question for you, Johnny, and we'd love to have you call back another time, is how do you think you're going to direct your search? Is it going to be, just how do you think you're going to direct your search next?
It's just by asking the right questions again, and then I have to start go back to all the other religions as I did before. For me, the only thing that brought me back to capitalism was like, so many people are willing to sacrifice their life because of what they believe and then going on. But like now I have to go right back and start back from the drawing board as I did before. Like, all right, now I got to go back to reread the Judaism, the Christianity. Got to like go through books and research again.
Okay, interesting. I can appreciate that. However, I think that instead of like studying the religions and all that, so I think we should just consider if there's like a rational basis for any of it. Like, are you going to examine Islam? Are you going to examine like the Sikh religion? The Sikhs are a religion, right? The Jains. Why aren't you going to evaluate those others, but you are going to evaluate like Christianity, for example? Again, it feels like, it seems to me that you feel like there's something to it and there's bias there where you don't feel like there's something to the others.
No, for me, there was something for the other, but then when I go back to the New Testament, Jesus says, "Be careful, for there are false prophets after me." And then that's when I had to scratch off the Quran, the Mormonism, but now I actually have to go back and.
Okay, yeah, but let's say that Christianity is incorrect, just hypothetically speaking. Let's say Jesus was just some guy, which we're evaluating now, right?
Yeah.
Why not evaluate the other religions in that case? And I posit to you, your reason for not evaluating the other religions is because you have a personal tie to this religion and are giving it more credence and more leeway than it deserves. If you took a step back and looked at this whole thing objectively, you would see that there is as much evidence for Christianity, Catholicism, or whatever, as there is for Islam, which is to say, none. What do you think?
I agree with you. Like, the first thing that I studied when I was like searching was in the Santeria, when it comes to the Haitian voodoo. Like, there was a time when I was like studying when it comes to the Greek mythos and the Norse mythos. Like, what about them? And I was actually at one point wanted to bring back the Greeks, because the Greek mythos, because they are gods that were created to be like men. They were not perfect. They were like just like men, and to me, I was like, oh, I want gods like that.
That is absolutely like. Yeah, for sure. I don't see any reason to believe it, though it's interesting. I appreciate kind of the archetype or whatever. Is that the right word? I appreciate that as a literary tool or whatever, but I don't feel like it's a good reason to like believe something,
I have other questions tied to this. You mentioned people dying. If someone is willing to die for a belief, that doesn't tell you whether or not it's true. And if many, many, many people are willing to die for a belief, that also doesn't tell you whether or not it's true. That's about how strongly they believe something. And the truth of a claim isn't impacted any way by how many people believe it, how strongly they believe it, how long they've believed it, how popular it is. So when it comes to the religion, and here's what partially what I did is I realized I didn't have good reason to believe what I believed, but I wasn't sure how to direct my search. And so I went and started learning more and more about philosophy in the hopes that I could figure out what kind of God might exist in order to better direct the search. If you're looking at things in the terms of how popular is it, how many people are willing to die, I don't see how that gets you to truth. And the big question is, let's say you come across a God belief that you find kind of compelling, because you just mentioned what kind of God you want to exist, which also the kind of God you
what I
want to
wanted
exist
before,
has no bearing on what God actually exists. I would rather there not be a God, or if there is, I'd rather there be a God of, I don't know, video games and sex and food, or I don't know. So how could you tell the difference if two people come to you and tell you that they believe in two different gods? They both believe really strongly. They're willing to die. They're absolutely convinced that this God has done a powerful work in their life. How can you tell which one of them's correct? And how do you tell if either of them is correct? Because they could both be wrong. You don't have to answer that now. That's just a question that I think is really good to focus on, because if you don't have a mechanism by which to tell the difference between a true claim and a non-true claim, you have no path to truth.
Oh, that hurt. Oh God, that was good.
Well, I hope it was useful, because
Yeah,
it's
Mo,
where I got
was.
stuck.
Call
It's
back
where I
and
got
let
stuck.
us know what you think.
Yep.
It's where you got stuck.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Johnny. I greatly appreciate this. You get, unless somebody calls in who's better, you get caller of the week, month, maybe even year. Who knows? But keep questioning.
Thank you. Y'all be safe.
Yep, you too.
I'll definitely.
See, here's the thing. If Johnny goes out and engages in the sort of critical thinking and skepticism, even anywhere near it, that you and I have engaged with and advocated for, if Johnny finds God, there's a good likelihood that Johnny will be able to explain how and why he found that God in a way that would help you and I find that God as well. And if he doesn't, then he'd call in and say, hey, I'm going down this route. And if we see an obvious error that we've seen, in ourselves or in other people doing this, then he gets to benefit from that. And so does everybody. Okay, Johnny's my favorite caller for today. Not that there was any stiff competition. But let's see.
If you hope.
Let's see if Mark in Canada. Oh, really? Okay. Mark in Canada wants to call in, pronouns are him, to say the Bible is against sodomy, not homosexuality. I don't care. But go ahead.
Well, no, I heard you and Owen talking about
if you heard
whether
me, Mark,
or not the Bible
Mark,
in Romans.
Mark, if you heard me, you will have heard me say homosexual acts, correct?
Yes, but sodomy, I mean specifically as anal sex. I don't mean it as
no, it's not. No, it's not.
Masturbation.
No, it's not. Not according to the U.S. government. But in any case, I said homosexual acts, not homosexuality, right?
Well, homosexual act. Yes, you did say that. Yes.
Yes. So why is it when I ask a yes or no question for clarification, so many people have such difficulty just answering the fucking question? All right. So you say the Bible is against sodomy and not homosexuality. Does the word sodomy appear?
It specifically says male liars in 1 Corinthians 6:9. It doesn't say homosexuality.
I didn't say it said homosexuality, which we've already established. Are you going to argue against the reality here, or are you going to keep pretending that it's something it's not?
Well, no. When it talks in Romans 1, for example, it doesn't say women had sex with women. You made the mistake of saying it says that.
No,
and it doesn't say
I didn't
that at
make
all.
the mistake. Does it say sodomy?
No, but I'm talking about classical
don't you dare say but. Don't you dare say but, because that shows everybody how absolutely dishonest this is. I asked a question whether or not it said sodomy, and you're like, no, but. No, you don't get to follow that with a but. It does not say sodomy. Instead, it talks about a particular concept, correct?
Yes.
Is that concept generally regarded and historically regarded as a homosexual act?
No.
You're wrong.
No, anal sex is not a homosexual act. You can have homosexual.
It is if there are two people of the same sex.
Yes, but not if you have sex with a woman.
If a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, they've committed an abomination. Are you this stupid?
That's right. And for the Jews' perspective, the Jews thought that the purpose of the
we lost him.
The purpose of what? You need to tap your phone to wake it back up because you're calling in through the web interface. And then you need to tap the actual browser again to get your audio back. We did not mute you. Your phone muted you. But the Bible doesn't say sodomy. It describes acts. Some of those acts would be described as and labeled as sodomy. But the thing it's objecting to is not the sodomy, not anal sex. It is about two men engaged in anal sex, which, by the way, would also potentially, in normative use for sodomy and historical use for sodomy, also apply to oral sex. If a man lies with a man, no, stop talking.
But men never had oral sex with women.
Stop talking. Wait, stop talking. Here we go. When the Bible says, if a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, it's an abomination. Is that talking about sodomy?
It's talking about anal sex, yes.
Okay. That means it's okay for a man to have anal sex with a woman, right?
No, because Romans 1 says no.
No, I'm saying when it says if a man has anal sex with a man, as he has anal sex with a woman, or as he would have anal sex with a woman, that's an abomination. So it's very clear that what the Bible objects to is two men having anal sex, not a man and a woman having anal sex. You're going to tap your phone and wake it up? Oh, you hung up and ran away. Okay.
Okay.
See, if you're calling in to say the Bible isn't opposed to homosexuality, just sodomy, Owen and I already had a conversation about to what extent the New Testament's opposed to homosexuality, but you have a ridiculous position because it's not sodomy. First of all, that word doesn't exist, and aspects of the concept have changed over the thousands of years since this stuff, or 1,000+ years since this stuff was actually written. But when the Bible says if a man lies with a man as he lies with a woman, and you say that's about anal sex, then what it is it's an abomination if a man has anal sex with a man. It may or may not be an abomination also if he has anal sex with a woman. That's unestablished. But the implication is that there's nothing wrong with it. And if that's the implication, that it's immoral when men do it, but with other men, but not when it's with women, then that is almost clearly a prohibition against homosexual acts, if not homosexuality. Now, the common Christian apologetic that gets tossed out by the gay-friendly churches is that God allows people to be gay. They just shouldn't act on it. And so God has put an extra stumbling block. If you're a woman who likes women, if you're a man who likes men, that's a stumbling block that God has given you to overcome, which is already disgusting and pretty stupid with regard to what we know about human psychology and human sexuality. But if you're calling in to say that the Bible's not opposed to homosexuality, is only opposed to sodomy, you're wrong, because the Bible never, as far as I'm aware, prohibits anal sex between a married couple.
Yeah, agreed. I'm not sure what sodomy meant in the context of the Bible. You said it's not in the Bible, right? But today in the U.S., according to the laws, doesn't it mean any sex that is not intended to produce a baby or something, or that could not produce a baby,
It's
something like
oral
that?
or anal sex. It's intercourse that cannot. So basically, this is anything that's not PIV, penis and vagina sex, is considered sodomy. It's sexual intercourse of anal or oral copulation.
There you
go. And there's a history of the term, that does not go back to biblical days, but there's definitely the concepts there. And this is the problem, is that people are like, oh, the Bible supports the Trinity. Well, it never uses the word Trinity. There's a ton of other words that the Bible never uses, but the concepts are there. Now, the concept of the Trinity that appears in the Bible is almost certainly a fraud. The Johnnian comma almost certainly didn't exist in the earliest and best manuscripts, and seems like an interpolation. There are three that testify in heaven, blah, 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 and then inserted the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And the concept of the Trinity was invented basically in like 325 CE at the Council of Nicaea, or at least adopted, I guess, at that point.
Yeah.
But it's, you can't just go, you know what? There are words, church-state separation of church and state doesn't appear in the Constitution. That phrase does not appear in the Constitution. However, the concept absolutely does, and that's what's established by court precedent, etc. What's happened is that Jewish scholars have interpreted the scripture, and Christian scholars have interpreted their scripture to say, here's what it means. But what they say it means and what it implies changes as the culture and society changes. And that's why up until 100 years ago, I don't think you'd have found a single Christian that argued that the Bible was anything other than anti-homosexual. But because our conversations about sex and sexuality and all these things have progressed and gained an understanding, now there's a good reason to go back and kind of respin things and say, ooh, this is what the ancient people thought. I'm not convinced, not a historian, so we'll have to get a historian in here, that first century Christians had any concept of homosexuality that strongly aligns with our concepts of it now. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting. And something else I wanted to mention, I always say on my channel, when you say separation of church and state isn't in the Constitution, gun rights isn't in the Constitution either. Like the term gun rights can't be found in there in the exact same way, because David Barton is always saying separation of church and state isn't in the Constitution, anyway.
So we're gonna branch off into a different world right now. So is it, I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce your name, and also you're calling the web browser, so you'll need to tap that in the phone. Is it Hua from Hong Kong? Okay. That was someone claiming to be Hindu and said atheists with their logic and reason just don't get it. Hinduism's been around for ages. We're the whole universe of gods and wisdoms. They're missing out on the real party and heading straight for a boring, meaningless existence. Wake up, sheeple. So I'm pretty sure, and I don't want to slight our call screeners because they're volunteers. You did fine. But it becomes kind of obvious when there's someone in Hong Kong referring to atheists and others as sheeple because we use logic and reason, and that this is the avocation for Hinduism, when by and large, I've had some of the best conversations with Hindus out of all religions, because they're kind of like, hey man, we got a million gods. Some of them I believe in, some of them I don't. It's fine. There's atheist Hindus, all this stuff. It is a different take. And I was like, ooh, we're going to get somebody to defend Hinduism, but instead, just another troll. So here we go. Christopher is calling from South Africa. Christopher's a theist, pronouns are he, him. If you're on the web interface, you have to tap. But it says here, heard an audible voice which led to an event the following day that defies logic. Wow. And I would like Matt's opinion, as I'm also in search of the truth. Christopher, what happened and how does it defy logic?
Matt, Owen, how are you?
Doing well.
Good. So what happened, this happened many years ago, to be exact, 2005, right? So
Okay.
what happened was I was in my room and sleeping, obviously, and a voice woke me up, an audible voice. And this voice didn't say that it's a god or anything. It just simply said, I want you to pray for a place. We were moving into a different location, a different house. So we had moved all our stuff in the house, and we'd got some people to come install a cable system to watch satellite TV. So the following day we were going to move in. I didn't think anything of it, but this voice just told me, just pray for the place that you're moving into. That's all it said, and it was audible, like I'm speaking to you now. So, and if that was the only thing that happened, I would have left it there, right?
Right.
But I live in a country where crime is rife, and the police are corrupt because they don't get paid a lot. So and it will make sense in a minute. So if they do catch a criminal and you do recover your stuff, the likelihood of them calling you and saying, we've got your stuff is very low, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So to get back to the story, so we'd moved all our stuff in, and all our stuff was there. We're going to move in the following day. The voice said that to me. It didn't say, I am Jesus or whoever. That's all it said. I didn't see anything in my room. It was dark. The following day, excuse me, my mother phones me. She says, our place was broken into. They took everything, but the police phoned us this morning. They found, because my mother used to travel overseas, so she had a bag with the name tag on and no number. And she said they phoned me this morning and said the place had been broken into and they were doing patrols. And they found a car, a suspicious car with a whole bunch of stuff in. Like it was loaded. And they stopped the vehicle and they searched the vehicle and they found this bag and all the stuff. And she says they phoned her and told her this. And then it got back to me, it like hit me, but this voice came to me.
All right, so let me try to summarize up to this point. If I understand, you heard a voice, and the next day, your house was broken into, but they found all of the stuff afterward. Is that right?
It was that same evening, that the voice told me, is the same evening they'd broken into.
How do you know that voice was anything? I mean, like, what do you believe about it? Do you think that this was God or what?
This is the question this is why I was phoning in. I don't know, but the only God that I was introduced to all my life was the God of the Bible. So I just linked the two, but there was no proof that it was that.
So, what did you pray for the place that you were moving to when the voice said to pray?
Correct, but I didn't specifically pray that nobody break into it.
Hang on. Jesus fucking Christ. Do you think the prayer made a difference?
I don't know.
Why would God tell you to pray for the place instead of saying, get over there and protect your stuff?
This is the thing that I'm phoning about. I don't know if the two are linked, but it was just strange that they happened that way.
Well, I think that I've got from the call screen here, it says that this is the event that basically defies logic, right? I don't think it defies logic. Let me tell you a story real fast. When I was little, my dad used to tell me that he was into black magic. And of course, black magic isn't real, but he said that he woke up one one morning, and like my mom was downstairs and he was laying in the bed, and there's just this face in front of him laughing at him, laughing, and he was paralyzed. He couldn't move. And come to find out, that's called sleep paralysis. I had it too. That's no indication of anything at all. So you're saying to me, I'm just giving a plausible alternative possibility. Maybe it was sleep paralysis that you experienced when you heard this voice, or whatever.
Awake.
Oh yeah, it feels like you're awake.
You said you were sleeping. You literally said you were sleeping, and a voice woke you up.
It woke me up, so I was awake. It's not that I was.
That's not the way. That's not the way sleep works.
Got you.
You're describing sleep paralysis, it sounds like, but just for a moment, assume with me that it is sleep paralysis. Is there any way that those chain of events could have happened if it was sleep paralysis?
Probably, yes.
Okay, just to clarify for the audience, if they're unfamiliar, sleep paralysis is when your brain is not fully in awake mode, but it's not fully in sleep mode. So like your body releases chemicals to paralyze you so that when you're running in your dream, you're not physically running or whatever. And you feel like you're awake and you can look around and everything, but your body is frozen because you're halfway between wake and sleep. And you're dreaming basically while you're awake, and you're seeing, it's usually scary stuff commonly, like people chasing you or something, or trying to come and get you or whatever. That's sleep paralysis. It sounds to me like it's very possible, nay likely, that you experienced sleep paralysis. It seems like this is an event that could have happened even if it wasn't divine. It doesn't seem like it defies logic to me.
And
that makes sense.
There's also, I could nitpick about the difference between defying logic or I don't have a reasonable explanation. When you say it was an audible voice, just like somebody talking, I don't even know how to phrase this. How can you tell the difference between being asleep and having your brain experience a voice that it thinks is audible versus and that prompting you to wake up and actually hearing an audible voice? Because there are experiences that we have, auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, but also it's all tied to perception of how your brain perceives things. And so when you're like, oh, I heard an audible voice, I get that there's a difference between like my internal dialogue and hearing my voice. But when I'm in a sleep state, whether it's sleep paralysis or whether there's a dream, or, like how many times have we seen, in movies, the person who wakes up from the dream only to wake up from waking up from the dream type of thing. And that exists because we have this common experience of a sort of hazy state surrounding sleep, both when you first wake up or whatever wakes you up, etc. So I don't know how to tell the difference between something actually spoke to you and you think something actually spoke to you. But the questions that I ask are there because it would need to make sense. So you're about to get your stuff stolen. And God knows, let's just assume it's God. God knows you're going to get your stuff stolen. Somebody said I'm not advertising my mug. So here's my mug. God knows you're going to get your stuff stolen. And so you're asleep. And God decides that unlike everybody else who gets their stuff stolen and everybody else who, has been burglarized, he needs to get you a message. And so he says, I want you to pray for the house that you're moving into. Is it more likely that there's any being that wanted to give you that message? Is that more likely than that you were concerned about your stuff being in a new place where you didn't exist or where you weren't staying, and your subconscious said, wow, I'm really worried about my stuff there, and that's what did it? How do you tell which one's actually happened?
You see, I didn't think about it in that way, man. Hence, speaking to you might make me question these things instead of me looking at it a one-sided dimension.
That's all I got.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction. People commonly, in my experience, believe a lot of these things because they were raised to believe them, and they just feel it's true, and they fabricate meanings around it and reasons and explanations and everything. They start with a belief and they work backward from there. And identifying the beliefs, I do this. I do this with all kinds of stuff. Identifying when you are doing that, not the royal you, but you, the plural you. Identifying when people do that is really, really important. It's important to kind of examine every part of your life, to make sure you're not doing that. Working backward from the conclusion.
Yeah, I just didn't want to fall into a hole where I think I'm right and I'm not without questioning it. I'd rather question and be wrong and see, okay, well, maybe I've been looking at this from a different perspective and I'm wrong. I'd rather admit that than fall into the hole of I'm right and everybody else is wrong.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of a challenge to implement the rules of logic in your everyday life, but when you start doing that, you realize how many things in your life are just ridiculous. How many beliefs you have that are they're not based on any foundation of any sort. And a lot of the beliefs are really damaging to people's lives. Like religion was terribly damaging to my life, for example.
I agree. Matt, before I go, I would just like to say I like the fact that you like Path of Exile. That to me is intriguing. So kudos on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Favorite games.
All right. Anything else?
Sweet.
Nothing else. Thanks a lot for helping me.
Thanks so much.
Look at it from a logical perspective.
All right,
Christopher, we're going to move on. I have to set this call up, and because it's about so Mary's calling from Florida. Pronouns are she, her. She's an atheist who wants to talk about changes made by the JWs, and I have to step away for a moment. So Owen will start this off and be much more useful than I ever would be anyway.
Okay, well, lay it on me then. I assume it's been connected. Are you there?
Hi, Owen.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you, darling?
I'm doing well. So you said you want to talk about the changes being made by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, I'm going to be the sweet Southern palate cleanser for all these other calls.
Okay.
I've recently heard that the JWs have now allowed women to wear pants, as well as very recently that they can now celebrate birthdays. Have you heard anything about that?
I've heard that. Yes, I heard it. It was a letter being passed around, but it was fake. It turns out it was a fake letter. I don't know why people would fabricate that, but I even saw, I saw a copy of the letter and I passed it around asking people if it was real. It's not. They have made a lot of changes.
The birthday thing?
Yeah, the birthday thing is not real. The pants thing, of course, is.
Okay. So
yeah, they've been making a lot of changes like that. What is it?
It's all just arbitrary. I mean,
yeah, it seems like it.
I saw, yeah, duh. I saw where their numbers are like dwindling, and I think they've only grown to like 0.8% new members. Are my figures wrong on that?
I haven't checked the figures recently, but I understand for a brief moment in time, they were the fastest growing religion in the United States. And then because of COVID, and then it plummeted, and they are, I believe, in the negatives now. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to check, but yeah, pretty much every religion has growth every year because population grows. People have kids and bring their kids into the religion and everything. Most movements are kind of constantly growing, but there are definitely growing at a slower pace than I would expect, and unfortunately growing at a faster pace than I would like.
It 0.8% growth?
I'm not sure. I could
That
probably
number?
find the answer to that.
Okay. Because I kind of keep up with what's going on with them, and I don't think they'll ever backtrack on the blood transfusion thing because they've let too many people die from that. So, but the women being allowed to wear pants and so you don't think the celebrating birthday things is
No, it's fake. Unfortunately, I would love to see that actually happen, but I'm looking here. It says here, I think I could be wrong. It says 1.3% increase in 2023, which is still pretty low. And these are self-reported numbers. You got to take it with a grain of salt. Also, in the 90s, they used to have like a section in the Watchtower kind of celebrating kids that died because they wouldn't take blood transfusions. I think that's a little beyond time.
God, are you kidding me?
100%
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, they stopped doing it because it was so like grotesque. Yeah. Oh my God. And on top of all of that, their reasons for banning blood in the first place was just to get attention in the news. Back in the 50s, I think it was Ray Franz that pushed it before he was the president.
But then they celebrated these kids died because they didn't get the blood transfusions that would have helped them live.
No. Yeah.
God. And another thing, hon, I heard about the book you wrote. Is it available on Amazon yet?
Yeah, definitely it is. In fact, if you want a signed copy, it's on owenmorgan.com. It's on Etsy.
I do want a signed copy.
Okay.
Because
I also wrote another book called "Was Hitler an Atheist?" That was recent, and
right, that's the one I'm talking about.
Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh yeah, that one. I also wrote a book about Jehovah's Witnesses and understanding Jehovah's Witnesses, and 100 questions for Jehovah's Witnesses. It's pretty interesting stuff. Goes through the history of it.
Give me that site again, hon. Give me that site again, hon, for a signed copy.
Yeah, it's owenmorgan.com. If you go there, you'll see there's like, I list the books. You just click on the books and you can find to get a signed copy. You can just search it up on Etsy, though. That's where it eventually directs, is to Etsy.
Okay.
Signed copy.
Because
yeah,
I never, I'll keep this brief because I know y'all prefer these callers, but I never knew the Catholic Church's association with Hitler until I heard Christopher Hitchens. You know, that was like, when I heard him talk about it, I was like, holy crap, Yeah.
So, they don't like that
to hear
publicized.
I wonder why. But to hear you really did a deep dive and wrote a book that's just awesome. If you were my son, I'd be so proud.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm super proud of the book. Like, I'm happy with how it turned out. It took me like a year, so much studying and everything was crazy. But anyway, yeah. Hopefully people like it.
Well, yeah. I'm gonna get a signed copy. So
okay.
Matt, you doing okay, hon?
I am. I just found out that Jimmy Carter died today. Former President Jimmy Carter died today at the age of 100 years. And,
holy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
Well,
I find it completely unsurprising and something that we actually kind of predicted, especially after his wife died, because same thing with Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash. It happens quite frequently that when one partner dies, it's not too long afterwards. And at the age of 100, it's not really surprising at all. And yet, my thoughts about Carter is that he was the best ex-president and was better as an ex-president than he may have been as an actual president.
He did a lot of work for like building homes for the homeless, right?
Yeah, Habitat for Humanity and all kinds of stuff. He spent his time right up until he couldn't anymore, just doing good.
Yes. And it's funny because just briefly, I was a teenager when he was running for office, and my dad was a hardcore Republican, and my mom was from Georgia, and she was for Carter, and my dad was for whoever was running against him. I don't remember because I was a teenager, but but
like yesterday.
It's funny. Yeah, he was an amazing man. I mean, he did good.
He did, and I understand when he got into office, he sold his peanut farm because he didn't want there to be a conflict of interest, right?
Yep.
That's just straight up honest. And in fact, everybody recognizes that as honest. Even Trump recognizes that as honest because that's what he said he was going to do. He's going to sell his businesses or give them to his kids or whatever. Isn't that funny looking back?
I bet nothing gets put in a trust this time.
Right.
Trump,
but he knows
Trump doesn't have
Oh, sorry.
Trump doesn't have an honest bone in his body, so it's
and when
fine.
He's got a bone in somebody else's body, that one's not honest either. But I'm
right. That was good.
Mary, thanks so much for calling. I got to move on, but I greatly appreciate it. I'm glad you got to talk to Owen about JWs and stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We have another caller here calling from Kansas. Jonah, pronouns are he, him, says, what do we as atheists offer besides nihilism? I don't think that we offer that or anything. What's up? What's up, Jonah?
Hi. Yeah. This is my first time calling both of you, and I'm happy to actually have both of you. Just a few seconds, actually, thank you for all the work that you do, both of you. Matt, I apologize. I got banned from your Twitch stream for a stupid reason, and that's neither here nor there. Getting to the point of what I was trying to say is, oftentimes, when I'm dealing with Christians now, as I become an atheist myself, I find myself having nothing to offer them in exchange for the everlasting life, or basically the Matrix kind of a blue pill, red pill situation, where I have nothing to offer them. Like if I take away their Christianity and I want to help them to feel better about it, there's nothing there other than reality, which reality sucks. It just does. But
I just disagree.
The main thing is
reality doesn't suck. I would prefer being live and existing in reality than to not exist.
Sure. You just said sure. Point, but
so you would agree. So you would agree with that?
Well, I guess I should clarify that when I say reality sucks, I mean the overwhelming fear of dread that I get from living in this world and having not only injustices, but like a threat of war and all sorts of craziness that happens. I think my life is great. I'm not trying to kill myself by any means. I have a fear of dread for what's to come, if that makes sense. And I can offer them nothing in return. And I've looked through as many of your videos as I possibly can. I can't really find your opinions on nihilism or what to offer in exchange for the hope that Christians have, which is that eternal life obviously is a pretty sweet gig. I have to admit, but I don't believe in it. It's just I think it's a cool gig.
I think that we don't really need to offer anything. We don't offer anything. Christianity is offering us something that's fake. Like I can promise that you will get $1 billion if you if you start believing the thing that I say that you should believe. That doesn't mean the other side, the people who reject what I'm offering, are offering nihilism or offering something worse or whatever. They're just like saying, like, you don't have $1 billion to give anybody. That's really the difference, I think. We're not offering anything. We're not taking anything. We're simply rejecting something that's false. And you know what? It sucks to know that we don't have... it sucks to know that the universe ends when I die. But I'm here for this short, fleeting moment, and I can enjoy it while I'm here. In fact, you know what? We got to witness the birth of a brand new age. Computers are... This is the future. We're in the future. You know, sci-fi writers used to write about the future in the 1920s, the 1900s. We're here. We got to see that happen. So that's pretty incredible. That's what I can offer people, an appreciation of the world around us. And that's all we got, you know?
I guess, yeah. It just it seems like we I mean, taking away someone's from hope and replacing it with basically, I guess coming to terms with reality is it. But I mean, it's not fun because I mean, I do see gross injustices in the world, which I want to help as much as I can. But you know, my life is fine, but I know that there's plenty of people whose life is not fine. You know, and then they live this life, and that's it. That's all they got. And then if I come to them, and especially some of my other, you know, go ahead. Sorry.
I would rather know true things than believe false things. I want to know as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible. So yeah, it does suck to not have the hope of like living in an afterlife or whatever, but
does it?
That's what it is. What is it?
Does it really though? Because if someone has suggested that you have an afterlife when you don't, then taking away that false hope means you now have a more accurate understanding of reality. It's like saying, it sucks that I didn't become a billionaire on my 18th birthday. Oh my, life is now meaningless. No, life is exactly as meaningless. Life's reward is in the living, not the afterlife. If you need an afterlife or to live forever to value this life, you are buying into a load of goods that is not real. There's nothing about the truth of nihilism that necessarily makes a subjective assessment about the quality of life. I'm a nihilist in the sense that I don't believe that life has any externally imposed purpose or meaning. And even if it did, I would be able to reject those because I am the captain of my own ship. But not living forever doesn't mean that this life becomes less valuable any more than having to eat again tomorrow made the meal that I had today less valuable.
Right. I mean, and it's I'm asking you guys, thank you for your responses so far, for helping me to come to terms with my own nihilism, because it ultimately feels, again, I have 5 kids. I love my family. I love my kids. I love everybody. I want to make that clear that I'm not dealing with suicidal thoughts. But ultimately, I feel like my life is meaningless. You know, like I don't have a purpose. And when I talk to my Christian friends,
what's wrong with that? Your Christian friends think that their life isn't meaningless, but they have a meaning that they can't demonstrate or prove, and that doesn't come from them.
So yeah, I don't want them to face the false reality either. I want to help them, you know, become better, like, you know, understand the truth of the situation we're in as well. But I feel like when I talk to them about, hey, this is the truth of the situation, and I pull back the curtain, and there's nothing there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I'm offering them a disservice. Like, I'm not helping them in any way. Like, letting them cling to the false hope of the matrix, so to speak.
How is it a disservice to show people they were lied to and to free them from the lie?
Because they're clinging to even as we've already said, it's a lie that's filled with hope. A hope is something we don't have.
No, it has no hope.
We don't
it
have
has
a hope
false
that
hope.
This will get.
It's false hope.
But it's still hope.
The truth is
it's still hope.
Absolute. How is it a problem to tell the fucking truth?
And the
truth is,
worry about it.
And the
truth,
I don't want to. No, but you came back with, but they have hope. No, they fucking don't.
You did say false hope. That is hope, Matt. That's not.
No, it's fucking not. No, it's not. No, it's not. False hope is not hope. I'm pointing out that if somebody has hope that you want to protect and you don't want to take it away, that's not the same thing as false hope, because you do want to take false hope away.
Yeah. And you know what else? Like I said, we're here for such a fleeting moment. What else can we do but enjoy it while we're here? And you know what? Religious people oftentimes are not enjoying it. They're working themselves into the ground for nothing. They are following ridiculous rules for nothing. So this false hope comes with a gigantic set of restrictive rules that ruin lives. Okay, my mom, for example, she doesn't talk to her children. I know for a fact that she sat around crying day in and day out because she doesn't talk to her children, because her religion says she shouldn't. Oh, she has hope. Yeah, she might be able to make it through, to the new system or whatever, but she's ruining the time that she has right here, right now. So if for no other reason than that, we should definitely dispel them of the falsehoods. But I appreciate the fact that we're here in the first place. Like I said, the universe ends when I die. So just enjoy it while you're YOLO, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So the thing I have to offer them is truth. That truth is opposed to hope. We've already I'm sorry, Matt. You were right. I mean, false hope is not hope as we would define it. But yeah, I just was trying to think of something, because I looked through your history of videos to try to find something about what you usually would replace it. So if you're discussing this with a Christian, what do you talk to them about? Just that this is the truth, and that's it. That's where you stop. Like, I know
when you cure cancer,
evangelism is not something
when you cure cancer, what do you replace it with? Nothing. The cure is the point.
I would say hope,
removing
probably.
the lie is the point. The harm that is done by people who've been dependent on a lie and hoping based on a lie, the harm was done by the lie, not the exposure of the lie. The harm was done by the false expectations. Just like if your parents said on your 18th birthday, you're going to inherit $1 billion, and you started living your life right up to your 18th birthday as if you were going to get $1 billion, went massively in debt. When you find out that you're not getting $1 billion, is it finding out that you're not getting $1 billion that did the harm? No, it was the lie that you were going to get the $1 billion that did the harm. The truth is an absolute defense.
Sure.
Trying to cushion
and the truth is definitely sometimes. I'm sorry, what?
Is it trying to cushion people's fall when they realize that their hope has been false? That's the challenge. But it's still important to make sure that truth is known and understood for the sake of it, because it does so much damage to people's lives in ways they don't even know.
And that's what I was trying to ask for. Again, I missed a video or something, I'll go back and watch it.
I can't understand a word you're saying.
And unfortunately, the sound is. Rob, are you there still?
I'm still here. Is this better?
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's better. So what was it you said?
Okay. No, you said cushioning the fall, and I think that's what I'm going for. So if you guys have made a video about that, again, I've watched a large portion of both your content, and I appreciate the work that you do. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do in similar ways with my own, family, my local base is talking to people about, the truth of the situation. But again, cushioning the fall is actually a good way to put it, and I should have probably led with that I don't want to, I don't want to bludgeon them with the truth. You know what I mean? I want to cushion the fall as much as I can and try to guide them into a productive conversation. What's that?
I don't ever see any opportunity to bludgeon them with the truth. In the discussions, they present their reasons for believing, and I will counter them. Some of them are never going to give it up, no matter what is said, and others will. I'm not taking away anything. I'm gifting something, and that is a better understanding to avoid lies. Now,
Okay.
if we focus on cushioning the fall, we're now doing the extra work that, it's like, hey, when you're cured of cancer, life's going to be a little bit different. I have no objection to, I'm not suggesting that you just walk into somebody and be like, Jesus isn't real. You're fucking stupid for believing this. You got no reason to believe this, and you're just going to need to give it all up now and deal with it right now instantly. Of course not.
Right.
But to say,
I mean, I guess,
to say bluntly, you do not have good reason for your beliefs, that's not taking it away. That's the start of them giving it up potentially.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That honestly is. And again, thank you for your responses so far. This is trying to help me and helping others to learn the truth, so to speak. Not so to speak, it is the truth. Sorry. And again, I was nervous. Thank you for both taking my call, but I think that's a satisfactory answer. If you have any other resources available for this, I would be more than happy to look into it. Anything else that you could provide to help in this, I would appreciate. Thank you.
I mean, there are books on morality that that are pretty interesting. Morality and oh my God, it's on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, just look for books on morality, logic, and things, and that might help you kind of tweak your perspective. So,
but part of it is a perspective of, ooh, should we be doing this? Should we be stealing people's hope? Should we be, are we doing them harm? Are we doing more harm than good?
Mm-hmm.
What if these people rely on their religion to be moral and good, and we take that away, and then all of a sudden they're raping and killing and all this stuff? I find those sorts of concerns and objections both silly and condescending as fuck, because I didn't need to be babied or have the fall cushioned. I managed to figure out things about ethics, and there's plenty of discussions and everything else about ethics and everything else. It is very much I didn't need a soft landing, but I'm concerned that somebody else would. And I'm not saying you're saying that, Jonah. I'm saying that some of this is derived. But also I'm seeing that Eve would love it if Jonah called after dark if he can. So is Eve doing after dark? Did we change that? I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway.
I've been on hold for a while, so I don't know if I can do that tonight, but I will. Eve is I'll try and call back when she's there. And then, these are mainly obviously for personal relations, not for, for strangers I meet on the street. I'm not evangelizing atheism, like going door to door like I used to as a Christian. But again, thank you guys so much, and I'll not take up any more of your time. I appreciate everything you guys do, and thank you all the time so much. I will continue watching all of your videos. I enjoy your content. Matt, I know we don't get along, but I appreciate your honesty, and thank you again.
I don't know who you are or what you were banned for.
I was banned for. I was stupid. I was
into it here.
Political reasons. That's why I was being an idiot. I did vote for Kamala Harris. You changed my mind, so there you go.
Sweet. Send me an email if you want to get unbanned. If you don't want to get unbanned, that's fine too. It's not a big deal. It's just Twitch.
Yeah, it's just Twitch. And I don't have your email address, but I'll find it somewhere. Thanks.
Later. sans.deity@gmail. Pretty straightforward.
Eve is indeed doing the show tonight.
Eve is indeed doing the show tonight. Eve and Forrest. So, so it was a lie to suggest that Jimmy was doing it tonight. That's going to be awesome, though. I can't wait. We got two more quick calls, or two more calls. They may not be quick, from atheists. And then as a reminder, we'll be shutting down, swapping everybody out. And then at 7 o'clock tonight, 7 Central, the Sunday show after dark will be Forrest and Eve. Do you have a preference as to which of these atheist calls we take first?
Let me take a look here. Let's see. I don't have a preference. They both seem interesting. Number 3 there seems pretty good, I suppose. We could just pick that one. Do you want to do that one?
We got one final call that I suspect is from a real person. John Marco in California, pronouns are he, him, has a question about the arbitrary selection of the Bible books. How you doing, John? Or John Marco, sorry.
Hi. Yes, hi. How you guys doing?
Doing well.
Doing all right.
So yeah, I had this question. I did ask it to Aron Ra, and he gave a quick answer. So I just was wondering what you guys had to say about it. So my understanding of the Bible is very limited, but from what I do understand, there were a lot of books that were written about, the Jesus character and all the biblical stuff, Abrahamic stuff, but only some of them were included. And that selection, from my understanding, was quite arbitrary. And I was wondering if that is true. Oh, it's not?
No, it's not arbitrary. It was selected. It was selected. There was lobbying. There was politics involved. There was fighting over which books get in and which books get out. And in some cases, it was done by a vote at different councils. Not arbitrary. It was about what people felt was inspired and instructional. For example, the Apocalypse of Peter, which was considered canon, or which was considered to be inspired and divine in origin, was not canonized, in part because preachers didn't like reading from it because of the graphic descriptions of what was happening in hell. None of it's arbitrary.
But that selection, how did they decide? This group of people decide what was true, what was more likely to be true, and not.
I just told you.
Isn't that?
I
understand. But that selection, couldn't that selection, because it was done by man and by people that were just making decisions based off of what they considered to be logical, couldn't that be used as a way to validate the Bible itself? No, I agree. You're right. It's not arbitrary. Okay.
How do you show that the 66 books in the current canon are not the ones that God would want in the canon?
Right, exactly. Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Maybe
John
I'm not
Marco,
verbally.
please don't do right exactly. You asked a question, and I asked a question that exposes the problem in your thinking, and your answer was right exactly. No, you're saying, couldn't this process be used to discredit the Bible? And so my question was, how do you show that the 66 books that were canonized are not the books that God would want canonized? You can't say right. You have to answer the question.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was a question. Okay, yeah, you can't show that they were or were not.
And if you can't show it, how could you possibly determine that the process disqualifies the Bible?
I see.
Yep. You're asking a question. It's a good question. It just, there's no way to do that. There's no way for us to show, hey, these people got it right or these people got it wrong. And so all you can do is say, we don't have good reason to think they got it right, but you cannot show. It's essentially an unfalsifiable proposition.
I see. Okay. Thank you so much. That was my question.
Okie dokie. Thank you. Owen?
Yes.
Sell your book again. I got a mug to sell in a second.
All right, yeah. Was Hitler an Atheist? It's on Amazon Audible, owenmorgan.com. I could probably pull up a picture of it, but it would take me too long. It's really interesting. I'm super proud of that book. Just about Hitler's interaction with different religions, like his interaction with Catholicism, stories about how he tried to kidnap the Pope, and his interaction with Jehovah's Witnesses, and Joseph Rutherford's letters to Hitler, like Jehovah's Witness leadership pandering to him and everything. And it talks about like all of it. So check it out.
I don't have an image to put up, but if you go to linemerch.com right now, you will find my coffee mug along with the other ones that are up there. Matt's Tree of Life, he can sell it, is what the description actually says. And that's part of a joke because when we were having fun, I was like, yeah, I could sell that. So let me sell this. Over the last 20 years, I've probably heard the phrase "look at the trees" or something that ties to "look at the trees" 1,000 times. In 20 years and all those calls, some version of "look at the trees." It's like, you can't explain. Only God can make a tree is a poem that may have done more harm to religious epistemology than any other poem and any other scripture written, because it feels intuitive that something like a tree requires a creator. Creation requires a creator. And the flaw is in calling it creation to begin with, because whether or not it's a creation is the thing in question, whether or not it's the intentional creation of a thinking agent. We don't have good reason to believe it is. So we have built my Tree of Life mug. It is one of several mugs that are available at linemerch.com as part of our holiday competition, including Eric Skeptic and Scoundrels, the John Holiday mug, which is a FAFO mug, Dissect the Boys Forest mug. Jimmy Snow is the worst host on the line. That's also the name of his mug. Aaron's Unspoiled Coffee tube, which just says Space. Arden's mug, which just says leave trans people TF alone. Paulogia has a mug that's all coffee, no table. Gotta like the coffee table reference. And Shannon has a competing mug that says, see, Paul, they're useful, and has a picture of a coffee cup on top of a coffee table. Seth's got the Thinking Atheist logo coffee mug. Alyssa has I Heart Promiscuous Women. Dr. Ben has the Venus Special Fluid Receptacle, which is support healthcare without binaries. Promise has the Disobey Eve snake with the apple. I have my Look at the Trees. Lux has a holiday mug that I can't even read. For some reason, both of the pictures don't show what it says, but its gender is something. And then Josie's holiday mug is also a, cat lady type thing, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I missed those two because they weren't there for the holiday party. In the meantime,
check them out.
What's that?
Yeah, check them out. You guys should go take a look at the mugs. Sounds interesting.
Anyway, tune in tonight, Sunday show after dark at 7 p.m. Central for Forrest and Eve. Good stuff there. Thank you, Owen, for joining me today. Thank you to Morgan for producing. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. We will be back with other shows on the line all the rest of the week, although I don't have the full schedule for you. That's it. Go to linemerch.com. Like, subscribe, join, do all the things. We'll see you next time. 'Cause I love you, babe.
Hey, by the way, here you go. There it is. I got a picture.
Was Hitler an atheist?
Yeah.
Was he?
No. He was not an atheist.